May 8th, 7:12 in the morning. My days would be so much more productive if I just didn't make mistakes. This is take two. This is Tech Tales 7, take two. Take one, I completed 20 minutes ago, and I reached forward to turn off that camera. I hit the button to turn it off, and as I pressed the button, I realized, wait a minute, the red dot's not there. It wasn't recording. And then I saw a message on the screen that said internal storage full, and realized immediately that I had forgotten to remove the SD card from my Mac and put it in the camera before I started the session. When I started the session, I pressed the button and started recording. The red light came on. This was recording, right? You are recording, yeah. So that masterpiece was just on the cutting room floor now. The Mac did its recording, and it's catching me from that camera, and it catches this microphone, which is the better microphone, and then that camera, which is a Panasonic handheld on a tripod, recording onto an SD card. That's currently my recording setup. Well, for this video, I've other videos, previous videos have been done a little differently on occasion. So this is take two, and something I neglected to tell you about in take one is from the last video when I was telling you about my issues with Camtasia on this computer, and I said I had only bought Camtasia a week prior, and you might have gone back and said, wait a minute, these earlier Tech Tales videos were from before that. Well, the first couple Tech Tales videos I did with Photo Booth on the Mac, and then I did, I think, one or two with Camtasia in trial mode. Now, I couldn't publish those until I actually bought the Camtasia license. So anyway, there's those hoops. And by the way, I also own Final Cut Pro, which I bought way back in 2012. And some of these videos will probably be done with that. I have come to realize there are features in Final Cut Pro that I like for certain kinds of videos. When they're longer videos and need more editing, there's features in Final Cut Pro, and I'll do another video later on that. I'm not going to go into that now. And there's some things that I prefer Camtasia for, so I'm going to be using both. All right, so let's get into what I told you during take one. Yeah, starting with, I had told you that there were probably some other things on my short list that I wasn't remembering, so I want to catch up on those. In addition to what I told you yesterday, I've got two brand new Lenovo laptops here that I need to set up for a client. These are high-end Lenovo laptops. My client paid, I think he's somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,500 for each of those, and he actually bought 4 of them. 2 of them are for his home on the coast, and 2 of them are for his home here in Fresno. He's the senior attorney and one of the founding partners of this law office that currently has 4 named partners and 2 or 3 other attorneys in the office. And he is moving into retirement. Retirement for him is not going to be a clear cutoff date, but he's been kind of working less and less over the years, and he's going to continue taking the more difficult cases that he's particularly suited for. So he already has laptops in both of these homes, but he wanted to get up to date and consistent equipment. So now he's got 4 of the same model machine. These computers are, two of them are for him and two of them are for his wife, who's also an attorney and a realtor, and I think she's into a couple other things as well. And they intend to continue being pretty active with their computers and the business, so they're not really going into retirement the way some people envision retirement. Now, these are high-end laptops because they use Dragon Naturally Speaking. Now, let's call them Bob and Holly. And Bob started with the Dragon Naturally Speaking years ago. And he's not a very good typist by his own admission. So when he found out about Dragon Naturally Speaking, he's really, really good with Dragon Naturally Speaking. Knows the program really well. Has always been up on the new developments with Dragon Naturally Speaking. And his wife, who's a very good typist, was not really very interested in Dragon Naturally Speaking until recent developments. She's become more interested in it, and he told me the other day that she says it's helping her back. It's more comfortable. She doesn't have her hands out on the keyboard all the time. So apparently she's really getting into it now and enjoying it. So that's why they have high-end laptops. So I need to set those up for them. And another item I forgot to tell you about yesterday on the short list of things to do. The businesses that are referred to as residential housing units. These are buildings that have many interior apartments, and you have to qualify for some kind of government assistance to live in these. It may be disability, it may be, financial issues, it may be age, maybe veterans. It's a variety of things that can qualify a person to live in these places. And there's 3 sites that all fall within the same family of businesses. There's a parent company over all of them. So I want to identify them somehow because I think I'm going to be talking about them over the next couple weeks because I have a few projects lined up with them. So there's MT, DT, GA, and TA. Obviously those are coded. I don't want to be too out front about identifying who they are, but I want to be talking to you about real work that I'm doing because I think that's useful for my target audience, the people that I'm trying to find that would find benefit in these videos. So yesterday I told you that after finishing the video I was going to go out to MT because the chief of security there, he's a chief of security for all 3 of those buildings. He was having difficulty with his connecting to the surveillance server, and I was talking to the surveillance technician over the phone and remote connection trying to solve the problem. So I went out there yesterday and investigated the problem, and I found the situation a little different than I expected. So let's start with at his computer I confirmed that I could do a ping space and the IP address of the surveillance server space -T, and that gives a continual ping. It keeps pinging that machine until you break out of it with Control C. And it would, within a minute, it would start failing, give a response of no reply or not found, whatever the wording is. And in less than a minute, it would be successful again. And then less than a minute, it would fail. Less than a minute, it would be successful again. So I wanted to see how is that computer connected into the networking equipment. So here's a picture of the general of the networking equipment area. Now this is, I'm not showing you a picture of the entire room that this is in. This is the break room kitchen for the staff. And this is the way it works out in small offices. Typically, the equipment just finds a place wherever it can find a place to exist. Whereas in larger offices, typically it's more neatly organized in a rack unit, or somehow more planned from the get-go. But in small offices, typically what happens is, back in history, they didn't have computers. Then they add computers. Then they connect them in a network. Then they put a network switch over here. Then there's a router. Then they get internet. And it's just an evolution over time. And typically don't want to just spend this boatload of money to design a space for them and to set aside a space for them. So this is the reality of what it's like in most of the offices that I work in. So I disconnected the Ethernet cable from Bill's computer, and here's a picture of the top row of the network switch. And I wanted to see which light would turn off when I disconnect the Ethernet cable from his computer. And here's a picture of the lights on the bottom part of the switch. And what I found is none of these lights turned off in response to disconnecting the Ethernet cable from his computer. Now these lights are flashing with activity, so you might see something that looks like it's off and it wasn't really off, but that's kind of irrelevant because you're not seeing the before and after picture. And yes, the record red light is still on. And here too. Let's make sure that one is still recording. Yep, there's an option for stop recording, so it is. I don't want this to go on the cutting room floor like the other one did. Okay, so what that told me is that his computer, there must be another network switch, maybe in the ceiling somewhere, because it's a long distance. And there's other computers out that direction. And I didn't do the wiring, and I didn't plan the wiring path. So it's probably 150 feet or more away and a few walls away to get to Bill's office. The chief of security, his name is Bill. So the next thing is I want to find out, okay, well, if I can't identify which port is for Bill, which port then is for the surveillance server? So I went to look for the surveillance server, and it wasn't even where I thought it was. It was in a different location. They had to direct me to it. And it's in a nice wall-mounted rack unit. Keyboard and monitor slides out, open up the monitor. So where is it connected to? And part of solving that is well, let's back up a step and show you a couple other pictures. Here's a picture of the Comcast router in this area. I've got a couple pictures of it, front and back. And then here's a picture again of the network switch. And then here's a picture of the Ubiquiti Edge router light. And then here's a picture of the patch panel. I'm hoping I actually have a picture of the patch panel to insert at this point. I think I do. So some things that I noticed here is notice the yellow wire coming from the Comcast router. It goes to the Edge router. And then the second wire in the Edge router goes to the network switch. But the third port on the Edge router is empty. Yesterday I mentioned that was configured for 192.168.2.x. So that was not even in use. So where is that 192.168.0 network at? And then I noticed this second wire on the Comcast router and followed it up the wall and through the ceiling. It never goes into the network switch. So now I'm thinking, oh, I bet that Comcast router uses the LAN addresses of 192.168.0.x. So I was able to connect to the Comcast router through Bill's computer and confirm that that is the case. So when Bill's computer sends a ping to the 192.168.0.254, which is the surveillance server, that signal goes to the network switch after passing whatever other network switch that I haven't found yet. And then it goes into the edge router, and then it goes out through the WAN port of the edge router into a LAN port of the Comcast router, then out through that second LAN port of the Comcast router to the surveillance server. So I'm realizing now that as far as firewall and routing issues, that could be in the edge router or it could be in the Comcast router. But there's other possibilities too. So I decided, I went back to Bill's computer because I happened to be there during their lunch hour, and I attempted a couple of changes on the edge router that did not give me immediate results. So I reversed those settings and decided I need to not just throw darts in this arena because I don't know this arena as well. Now the edge router, Ubiquiti Edge Router Lite, and the Ubiquiti Edge Router, the not Lite version, they are fully configurable routers. It's not like a Netgear router or a Linksys router or TrendNet router. Do I remember that name right? In that those routers, you can buy them, take them out of the box and plug them in, and they're all set up with default settings that you can just plug and play, and they work. Not true with the Ubiquiti Edge line of routers. They are fully programmable. They do nothing out of the box. No matter what you plug in, you're not going to get anything out of it. The way you got to start with it is plug in a computer and configure a static IP address on the computer for the first port on the edge router. I was going to call it the WAN port, but the edge router doesn't even define a WAN port. You could wind up having your internet router plugged into any of those three ports, whichever one you have configured for that purpose. The other two ports, you can configure them to be whatever local network that you want. Typically, they would be a separate IP range. So I configured that router myself, and I've done a few of those for different offices. I have those operational in a few offices, and it's quite a learning curve to program those. And there's some specific features or advantages that we were after in each of those, and that's too much to go into right now. Now, in this office and one or two other offices, I've got this set up in a way that some network engineers might really object to. I'm not sure how they feel about this at all, but so there's two routers here connected in series. A LAN port from the Comcast router goes out to what I've configured as the WAN port on the edge router, and I've got both of these boxes operating as routers. The Comcast router could have been switched over to bridge mode. It is not. It is functioning in router mode. So that means both of these devices are performing network address translation, otherwise known as NAT, N-A-T, That's a way of concealing your computers that are on the local area network side of the office, concealing them somewhat from computers out there on the internet. Makes it a little more difficult for hackers to actually reach a computer that's inside the office. Well, I've got two NATs going on here. Theoretically, makes it more difficult. Now, it has some overhead cost in performance, but these computers don't need that particular kind of performance. If you were doing very high traffic volume from a workstation out to the internet and you needed really fast speeds, then you wouldn't want to have your signals going through two routers. It's not a huge cost, but it is a cost, and it's not really the way it's supposed to be done. At least I think. I'm not a certified network engineer, but I know my stuff pretty well. For the offices that I work in, if I were to try to apply for a job in a large corporate environment that has an actual IT department, I probably wouldn't get hired because I don't have the credentials and the standardized training that they want. But my experience in training is just right for the small office environment, and you probably don't want to have one of the traditionally trained network engineers, because they're just going to spend your money way out of proportion to what small businesses can afford. Now, so what next for the MT office? I decided I needed to stop throwing darts at this point, because it's okay to throw darts when you're in a realm that your experience base says, the problem's probably over here based on experience. After 2 or 3 of those attempts fail, then step back, take a more intelligent, planned approach. And this is really what I wanted to get into with describing this, is the troubleshooting thought processes. So I now keep in mind, I've been doing this as my own business since 1992. So I've got quite a bit of experience, yet every week I come across something I've never seen before. That is the job, to be able to come across something you've never seen before and figure it out. That's really what this job is about, and to enjoy that challenge. So to figure out the beautiful thing in this problem is I've got a consistent symptom. I can do that ping command. I don't have to install special software on any computer to test it. I could do this test from any computer in the office, but here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a laptop in there, connect Bill's Ethernet cable into my laptop, do the ping command. If I had the same symptom on the laptop, then that proves the problem is not Bill's computer. I'm suspicious about something on Bill's computer. It's a Windows 8 computer. It was repurposed from being used as the surveillance server in the old days at this office. It's a very beefy computer. It's an i7. It's actually a cube shape, which I haven't worked with a cube shape before. It's pretty heavy. But it's Windows 8 Professional, and it is currently displaying that it is not activated. And I tried to activate it. It wouldn't activate. I don't have the registration key for it. And I don't know the history. I don't have access to the history of it. So I think what we're going to do with his computer, if I find that is the problem, is we'll just buy a Windows 10 license and install it on that computer. Be done with it. Now, if my laptop works with his Ethernet cable, then I pursue Windows 10 on his computer, and it completely says that the routers are fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And the surveillance server, it's fine. If my laptop has the same problem, then the problem is upstream. Then I'll take my laptop to the network switch in that kitchen, and if it works there, then that means there's some problem all along the Ethernet line, or maybe that switch that's up in a ceiling panel somewhere. Could be a problem there. If plugging into the switch with my laptop fails, then I'm going to plug my laptop into the Comcast router. Now at that point, my laptop's going to acquire an address of 192.168.0 dot something. See if I can do the ping command there. If that fails, then that tells me that the Ubiquiti Edge router, which is my highest suspect component, that tells me the Edge router is fine. If my laptop fails plugged into the Comcast router, then the Edge router is fine. So then I'm looking at the Comcast router as the source of the trouble, or the surveillance server itself. So that's my thought processes at this moment. I think I probably left out a couple variations, but I wanted to get across the idea of when you've come across a problem that you haven't seen before, step back, try to come up with a more intelligent approach, try to take the whole universe of possibilities of what might be wrong and chop it in half. If the problem's on this side, then chop that in half. If the problem's over here, then start looking at issues there. Chop it in half again if you can. And that gets you to the real source of the trouble in a more efficient method than just throwing darts at what else could it be? Try that. No. What else could it be? Try that. No, that's just wastes a lot of time. It wastes the client's money. And it's a very frustrating experience. When you take a planned approach, intelligent approach, it's a very satisfying when you find the solution and fix it. And sometimes I get into that situation where other technicians have tried and failed. And that's particularly satisfying. Well, I think that's probably long enough for yakking at you in this session. I'll catch you next time. Bye.